Here we go, fabulous froggy frogs. We're on page 4, example at the top. Cub this with me as I read. Compare the values below using less than, greater than, or equal to. Prove your answer by plotting each value on the number line. So I'm going to underline that part of the question. Prove your answer by plotting it on the number line. Well, the two values we have are listed here. 0 and 2/100ths versus 0 and 2/10ths. So we've got to figure out not only how do we compare these, but also how to put them on the number line. So let's first jump down to our number line right here. We start with 0, and everything to the right is bigger than that. So I'm going to say these are the small values on the left. And as we move to the right, we get to our bigger values. So put big on the right. Look at our first gap in the number line. I'm going to use my highlighter here so you can see it in green. We start with 0, and we move all the way down the line until bloop, we get to 0 and 1/10. Between 0 and 0 and 1/10, there are 10 equal spaces, 10 intervals. Well, think to yourself, what is each one of those spaces worth if there are 10 of them between 0 and 1/10? If you're thinking, well, they're each worth 100th because 10 hundredths fit inside 1/10, you're correct. So let's figure out where 0 and 2/10 would go in. Well, this first dot, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see. This first dot, that would give us 0 and 1/10 right here. 0 and 1/10. Next to that would be 0 and 2/10. And we could actually continue this pattern all the way down. I'm just going to put the line so you know which one I'm looking at. 0 and 4/10. Continuing this pattern on your paper. 0 and 5/10. 0 and 6/10. 0 and 7/10. We're getting close. 0 and 8/10. And then this last one is 0 and 9/10. So each one of those spaces is worth 1/100th of a value. All right, so we need to plot 0 and 200. Zoom out again so we can see our numbers. Well, I see right here, the second space would be worth 0 and 2/100ths. So I'm going to take my pen, I'm going to just put a dot right above there. And label that dot whatever the value is. So here the value is 0 and 2/100ths. 0 and 2/100ths. Always label the dot so you know what we're looking at. The second value we have to plot is 0 and 2/10. Well, we don't even have to do any more hundredths here because 0 and 2/10 is right here. So put that and then label it above just so we know what you labeled. Okay, and if we know all of the numbers to the left are smaller and all of the numbers to the right are bigger, well, we know 0 and 2/10 has to be bigger here because it's more to the right. So put 2 dots next to 0 and 2/10. Put 1 dot next to 0 and 2/100ths, and then connect your dots. There's our inequality sign. Try the next one on your own. Go. If you figured out the answer that I have on the board, you're on the right track. 0 and 13/100ths is less than 0 and 31/100ths. You can see, once we zoomed into our number line, between 0 and 1/10 and 0 and 2/10, we have 10 spaces. And they have to take up a total of 1/10, because there's 1/10 between this and this. So each space is worth 1/100th. So we can just count from 1/10, 1, 2, 3 spaces. And that would be 0 and 13 hundredths. Another way to think of this is we can take 0 and 1/10 and just put a 0 on the end, and it doesn't change the value. So here we're going from 0 and 10 hundredths all the way to this point, add a 0 on the end, and it's 0 and 20 hundredths. If that helps you understand how this 13 hundredths fits between 10 hundredths and 20 hundredths, you can use that strategy as well. Look at example 2. Find the value of points A, B, and C, those are keywords, box them, on the number line below. I'm going to underline find the value right there. So let's look at our number line. Well, we know it's between 0 on the left, that's our lowest number, all the way to 1/10 on the right. So this entire line represents 1/10, from 0 to 1/10. And we know if there are these 10 equal spaces between them, each space is worth 1/100th. So I am going to look at A. Well, if each space is worth 100th, and I have 2 spaces I went, A's got to be worth 0 and 2 hundredths. Let's look at B. Well, B is, oh my goodness, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. So that's going to be 0 and 5 hundredths, which is right between 0 and 0 and 1/10. And now C is really tricky here. Let's look at C. I know this space is 0 and 9 hundredths. And then this ending point here, where this dot is, that's going to be 0 and 1/10, which is the same as 0 and 10 hundredths. But I've got to find something that's between these two. I'm going to zoom in so we can look at C really closely. Where is it? There it is. What could we do to find a number that's between 9 hundredths and 10 hundredths? Is there any value between them? Oh, we could start to use our thousandths place. Because we know, I'm going to erase this just so you can see, we know 9 hundredths is also the same as this. Watch. Here's 9 hundredths, which is the same as 90 thousandths. We can just put that 0 on the end. And 10 hundredths, well, we can put a 0 on the end, and that's the same as 100 thousandths. So now I'm thinking, well, what's between 90 thousandths and 100 thousandths? Right in between here would be 0 and 95 thousandths. Because 95 is between 90 and 100, right in the middle of 90 and 100. So C is worth 0 and 95 hundredths.